You think discipline is a cage. You think it's the thing that locks you into a life of rigid routine and joyless obligation. You look at disciplined people and you see robots who have traded their freedom for a schedule. But you're wrong, completely wrong. And that misunderstanding is exactly why you're suffering right now. The truth is the exact opposite of what you believe. Discipline is not what takes your freedom away. Discipline is what gives you freedom. Real freedom. Not the fake freedom of doing whatever you want in the moment, but the actual freedom of being able to do what matters when it matters. The freedom to choose your life instead of being swept along by it. The freedom to build something instead of just surviving. Right now, your life is controlled by your impulses, by your mood, by your circumstances, by the whims of your emotions and the demands of your environment. You think you're free because you can skip the gym or eat whatever you want to stay up late watching garbage. But that's not freedom. That's slavery to your weakest instincts. That's being controlled by the part of you that wants immediate pleasure at the cost of long-term power. Every undisciplined choice you make is a vote for a future version of yourself that's weaker, smaller, and more trapped than you are right now. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, you're building a prison. Every time you give in to distraction or laziness or fear, you're handing control of your life to forces outside yourself. And then you wonder why you feel powerless, why you feel stuck, why you feel like life is happening to you instead of being created by you. I'm going to show you why weak minds always suffer. I'm going to show you why the people who seem the most free are actually the most disciplined. And I'm going to show you how to stop being a slave to your own weakness and start being the master of your own destiny. But I need you to understand something first. This is going to require you to give up the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself about what freedom means. Are you ready to see the truth? Are you ready to understand that the path to real freedom goes directly through discipline? Then let's destroy the illusions that have been keeping you weak. Let's build a mind that's strong enough to create the life you actually want instead of just reacting to the life you've been given. Chapter 1. Your weakness is not freedom. You convince yourself that giving in to your impulses is somehow an expression of freedom. That eating the junk food, skipping the workout, staying in bed, avoiding the hard conversation, or procrastinating on important work is you exercising your right to choose. But it's not. It's you being controlled by the weakest part of your psychology. Freedom is not the absence of discipline. Freedom is the consequence of it. When you lack discipline, you don't get to choose your life. Your life gets chosen for you by whatever feels easiest in the moment. You become a leaf in the wind, blown around by circumstances and emotions that you have no power to resist. That's not freedom. That's helplessness disguised as choice. Think about your typical day. How much of it is actually chosen by you, and how much of it is just you reacting to stimuli? You check your phone the moment you wake up because you feel the pull of notifications. You eat what's convenient instead of what serves your goals because you don't have the discipline to plan ahead. You avoid difficult tasks by finding busy work because you can't handle the discomfort of real effort. You say yes to things you don't want to do because you lack the discipline to set boundaries. None of these are free choices. These are compulsions. These are patterns of weakness that run your life while you pretend you're in control. And the cost of this weakness is your future. Every undisciplined day compounds into an undisciplined year. Every moment of giving creates a neural pathway that makes it easier to give in next time. You're not building freedom. You're building a prison of habits that will eventually trap you completely. The disciplined person looks rigid to you because you're viewing them through the lens of your own weakness. You see their structure and you interpret it as limitation. But what you're missing is what that structure creates. The disciplined person can say no to immediate pleasure because they're working towards something bigger. They can endure temporary discomfort because they know it leads to permanent strength. They can make hard choices because their mind is strong enough to override their impulses. This gives them options that you don't have. They can change careers because they've built skills through disciplined practice. They can leave toxic relationships because they've built self-respect through disciplined choices. They can take risks because they build a foundation through disciplined preparation. While you're stuck in the patterns that feel comfortable, they're moving through life with actual agency. You need to understand the difference between comfort and freedom. Comfort is what you feel when you avoid challenge. Freedom is what you have when you can face any challenge. Comfort is choosing the easy path repeatedly until the easy path becomes the only path you're capable of walking. Freedom is building the strength to walk any path you choose, no matter how difficult. The weak mind suffers because it has no discipline to fall back on when life gets hard. And life always gets hard. Everyone faces setbacks, losses, challenges, and pain. The question is not whether you'll face these things, but whether you'll have the internal structure to handle them. Discipline is that structure. It's a scaffold that holds you up when external circumstances are trying to tear you down. When you lack discipline, everything is a crisis. A missed workout feels like a failure. A difficult project feels impossible. A setback feels like the end. Your emotional state is entirely dependent on external conditions being perfect. And since external conditions are never perfect, you're always suffering. You're always stressed. You're always anxious about the next thing that might go wrong because you know you don't have the internal strength to handle it. But the disciplined mind suffers less because it's not dependent on external circumstances. It has routines that create stability. It has practices that generate strength. It has systems that produce results regardless of how you feel on any given day. This is real freedom. The freedom from being jerked around by your emotions and circumstances. The freedom to be steady in a chaotic world. Look at where you're suffering right now in your life. I guarantee that suffering is connected to a lack of discipline in some area. You're suffering financially because you lack the discipline to save or invest or build skills that increase your income. You're suffering physically because you lack the discipline to eat well and exercise consistently. You're suffering in relationships because you lack the discipline to communicate clearly or set boundaries or work through conflict. You keep hoping that something external will change to make your life easier. But nothing external is going to save you. The only thing that will save you is developing the internal discipline to handle your life regardless of external conditions. This is a hard truth that weak minds refuse to accept. They keep looking for the easy way, the shortcut, the magic solution that will let them be free without being disciplined. There is no such solution. There never has been. There never will be. The path to freedom goes through discipline. Not around it. Not over it. Through it. You have to do the hard thing enough times that it becomes easier. You have to override your impulses enough times that you develop control. You have to choose your long-term good over your short-term comfort enough times that it becomes your default. This is not a prison sentence. This is liberation. Every disciplined choice you make is you taking back control from your weakest instincts. Every time you do what you said you would do instead of what you feel like doing, you're proving to yourself that you're not a slave to your emotions. You're building evidence that you can be trusted, that you have agency, that you are free. Start today by identifying one area where your lack of discipline is creating suffering. Just one. Don't try to fix everything at once. Pick the one thing that, if you handled it with more discipline, would reduce your suffering the most. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your work habits. Whatever it is, make one disciplined choice in that area today. Not tomorrow. Today. That one choice won't fix everything, but it will start to shift your identity from someone who is controlled by weakness to someone who has the strength to choose. And that shift is the beginning of real freedom. Chapter 2. Discipline creates options while chaos destroys them. You think you're keeping your options open by staying undisciplined, by not committing to a routine or a goal or a path. You think that by remaining flexible and spontaneous, you're somehow preserving your freedom to choose. But the opposite is happening. Your lack of discipline is systematically destroying your options until you have almost none left. Discipline is what creates real options in life. When you consistently work out, you have the option to be physically active without pain or limitation. When you consistently save money, you have the option to take risks or handle emergencies. When you consistently build skills, you have the option to change careers or negotiate for higher pay. Every disciplined habit you develop expands what's possible for you. But when you lack discipline, your options shrink. You can't take the hiking trip because your body isn't capable. You can't leave the job you hate because you have no savings and no other skills. You can't pursue the relationship you want because you haven't developed the self-respect that makes you attractive. You can't take the opportunity that shows up because you haven't done the preparation that would allow you to capitalize on it. This is a cruel irony that undisciplined people never see until it's too late. They think they're preserving freedom by avoiding commitment and structure, but what they're actually doing is painting themselves into a corner. They're creating a life where they have fewer and fewer real choices because they haven't built the foundation that choices require. Think about your physical health. Every day you skip the workout or eat the junk food, you're making a choice. You think you're choosing freedom. You think you're choosing to do what you want. But what you're actually choosing is a future where your body limits what you can do, where you can't play with your kids without getting tired, where you can't hike or travel or enjoy activities that require basic fitness, where you're dependent on medications and doctors for problems you created through a lack of discipline. The same pattern plays out financially. Every time you spend money on something that doesn't matter instead of saving or investing, you're choosing immediate gratification. You think you're free because you bought the thing you wanted, but you're actually choosing a future where you have no options, where you can't quit the job that's destroying your mental health, where you can't invest in opportunities that come your way, where you're trapped by debt and living paycheck to paycheck. The disciplined person looks constrained to you because you see them saying no to things in the present. They're not buying the expensive car. They're not eating the dessert. They're not sleeping in. They're not saying yes to every social invitation. You interpret this as sacrifice, but what you're missing is what they're saying yes to. They're saying yes to a future where they have options, real options, not the fake freedom of choosing between things that don't matter, but the actual freedom of being able to choose the direction of their entire life. There's a concept in systems thinking called degrees of freedom. It refers to how many independent ways something can move. A disciplined life has high degrees of freedom. You can move in many directions because you built the capacity to do so. An undisciplined life has low degrees of freedom. You're stuck in patterns because you lack the strength or resources or skills to do anything else. This is why weak minds suffer. They've created a life with very few options. And when you have few options, you're vulnerable. You're at the mercy of your employer, your circumstances, your health, your relationships. If any of these things go wrong, you have nowhere to turn because you haven't built alternatives. You haven't created a foundation that would give you the freedom to adapt. Discipline is not about rigidity. It's about building capacity. When you're disciplined about your health, you're building capacity to be physically active in ways that matter to you. When you're disciplined about your finances, you're building capacity to make choices based on what's right instead of what you can afford. When you're disciplined about your skills, you're building capacity to create value in multiple ways. This capacity is what translates into options, and options are what create real freedom. Not the fake freedom of doing whatever you feel like in a moment, but the actual freedom of being able to respond to life in powerful ways. The freedom to say yes to opportunities. The freedom to say no to situations that don't serve you. The freedom to pivot when circumstances change. The freedom to build the life you actually want instead of settling for the life your lack of discipline has created. Look at your life right now and ask yourself honestly, how many real options do I have? If you lost your job tomorrow, how many directions could you go? If your relationship ended, how strong would you be on your own? If your health started to decline, how much could you recover? If an opportunity appeared that required immediate action, could you take it? If the answer to these questions makes you uncomfortable, you're seeing the cost of your lack of discipline. You're seeing how the undisciplined choices you've been making have systematically reduced your options until you're in a position where you feel trapped. And the feeling of being trapped is suffering. That's what weak minds experience. The constant anxiety of knowing they're not in control. The constant fear that something will go wrong and they won't be able to handle it. You can change this, but it requires you to start building discipline in areas where it matters. Start with your health. Build the capacity to move and perform physically. Start with your finances. Build the capacity to weather storms and seize opportunities. Start with your skills. Build the capacity to create value in multiple contexts. Each of these areas of discipline expand your options. Each one gives you more freedom, not less. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to build enough discipline that you have options when they matter. that you're not trapped by your past choices, that you can adapt and respond and create instead of just reacting and surviving. This is the freedom that discipline creates. And it's worth infinitely more than the fake freedom of giving in to your impulses. Chapter 3. Suffering comes from the gap between who you are and who you could be. There's a specific kind of pain that undisciplined people carry with them everywhere. It's not physical pain. It's not even emotional pain in the traditional sense. It's the pain of knowing you're not living up to your potential. The pain of seeing the gap between who you are and who you know you could be if you just had the discipline to bridge it. This pain is constant and corrosive. It shows up when you look in the mirror and see a body that reflects your lack of discipline. It shows up when you check your bank account and see the consequences of your financial choices. It shows up when you're at work doing something you hate because you never developed the skills to do something better. It shows up in your relationships when you see patterns repeating that you know you should have fixed by now. The weak mind tries to numb this pain. It reaches for distractions, substances, entertainment, or anything that will make the discomfort go away for a moment. But the pain always comes back because it's not coming from outside. It's coming from the fundamental misalignment between your actions and your potential. And no amount of distraction can fix that. Only discipline can. You know what you're capable of. Deep down, in moments of honesty, you know you could be in better shape if you just had the discipline to exercise and eat right. You know you could be more successful if you had the discipline to develop your skills and put in the work. You know you could have better relationships if you had the discipline to communicate clearly and work through conflict. You know all of this. And that knowledge is what creates the suffering. The disciplined person doesn't carry this burden, not because they're perfect, but because they're actively closing the gap. They see the distance between who they are and who they want to be, and they're taking disciplined action every day to bridge it. They're not there yet. They might never fully get there, but they're moving in the right direction, and that movement creates peace instead of pain. This is one of the paradoxes of discipline that undisciplined people don't understand. The disciplined life feels hard in the moment, but easier overall. The undisciplined life feels easier in the moment, but harder overall. When you're disciplined, each day requires effort and discomfort, but you go to bed with peace because you're moving toward who you want to be. When you're undisciplined, each day feels easy because you're giving in to your impulses, but you go to bed with anxiety because you're moving away from who you want to be. The suffering of weak minds is the suffering of stagnation, of knowing you're capable of more, but not having the strength to pursue it, of seeing your life drift in a direction you don't want while lacking the discipline to change course, of carrying around the weight of unlived potential that gets heavier with every undisciplined choice. Think about regret. Real regret doesn't come from things you tried and failed at. It comes from things you never tried because you lack the discipline to push through the initial discomfort, the business you never started, the skill you never developed, the relationship you never pursued, the body you never built, the life you never lived because discipline felt too hard. This regret accumulates. It builds up like plaque in an artery until it restricts the flow of possibility in your life. You become someone who is defined more by what you didn't do than by what you did. And that is a special kind of suffering. It's the suffering of looking back and realizing you were the obstacle, not circumstances, not other people. Your lack of discipline, your inability to do hard things, your choice to prioritize comfort over growth. The only way to avoid this suffering is to start closing the gap now, today, not tomorrow, not when you feel more motivated, not when circumstances are better. Now, you close the gap by taking disciplined action, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because feelings are temporary, but discipline creates permanent change. You need to identify the specific areas where the gap between who you are and who you could be is causing you the most pain, where you feel the most disappointment in yourself, where you feel the most shame, where do you avoid looking because it hurts too much. That's where you need to apply discipline. That's where the suffering is concentrated, and that's where freedom is waiting. Start by setting a clear standard for yourself in that area. Not a vague goal like get better, but a specific standard like work out 4 times a week, or save 20% of my income, or spend 30 minutes every day learning a new skill. Make the standard concrete enough that you know whether you're meeting it or not. Then meet it every day, without negotiation, without excuse. The first few weeks will be brutal. You'll feel the full weight of the gap. You'll be confronted daily with how far you are from where you want to be. This is good. This discomfort is the price of change. It's the signal that you're actually doing something instead of just thinking about doing something. Push through it. The discomfort decreases as your discipline increases. After a few months of consistent discipline, something shifts. The gap starts to close. You start to see evidence in the mirror, in your bank account, in your work, in your relationships. You start to become the person you knew you could be. And that alignment between your potential and your reality is one of the deepest sources of happiness available to humans. It's the satisfaction of knowing you're not wasting your life, that you're actually living it. The suffering of weak minds comes from the gap. The freedom of disciplined minds comes from closing it. Which side do you want to be on? The side that carries the weight of unlived potential? Or the side that's actively becoming who they're meant to be? The choice is yours. But understand that not choosing is choosing. Every day you delay is another day the gap widens. Another day the suffering compounds. Another day you prove to yourself that you're not strong enough to change. You are strong enough, but strength without discipline is just potential, and potential without action is just suffering. Close the gap. Start today. Chapter 4. Your mind needs structure or will create chaos. The human mind is not designed to operate without structure. It needs constraints, boundaries, routines, and rules to function at its best. When you remove all structure in the name of freedom, you don't liberate your mind. You doom it to chaos. And chaos is exhausting. It's anxious. It's the opposite of freedom. Think about your worst mental states. When you feel most anxious, most overwhelmed, most scattered, it's usually when you have no structure to your day. When you wake up with no plan, when every decision is up for debate, when you have to use willpower to determine every action. This is cognitive overload, and it's one of the main sources of suffering in modern life. The undisciplined mind wakes up every day and has to make thousands of micro decisions. Should I work out today? What should I eat? When should I start work? Should I check my phone? Should I respond to that message? Should I work on an important project or the easy tasks? Every one of these decisions burns mental energy. And by midday, you're exhausted even though you haven't actually done anything difficult. You're just mentally drained from the constant decision-making that discipline would have eliminated. The disciplined mind doesn't have this problem. It has routines. It has systems. It has rules that eliminate most decisions before they even come up. You work out at 6 a.m. every day, so there's no decision to make. You eat the meals you prepared on Sunday, so there's no decision to make. You start work at 8 a.m. and work on your most important task first, so there's no decision to make. This structure frees up your mental energy for the things that actually matter. This is a paradox that weak minds can't grasp. Structure creates freedom. Rules create flexibility. Discipline creates space. When you eliminate the need to constantly make basic decisions about health, work, and routine, you free up massive amounts of cognitive capacity for creativity, problem solving, and deep work. You're not spending your mental energy on should I or shouldn't I? You're spending it on how can I make this better? Your mind also needs structure to feel safe. The weak mind is constantly anxious because it's constantly uncertain. Without discipline, you never know if you're going to follow through on your commitments. You can't trust yourself. You can't predict your own behavior. This creates a background hum of anxiety that never goes away. You're always wondering if future you will do what present you is planning. But the disciplined mind knows. It knows that if you say you're going to work out tomorrow, you will. It knows that if you commit to finishing a project, you will. This self-trust is one of the greatest gifts discipline provides. It eliminates the anxiety that comes from not knowing whether you can count on yourself. And that elimination of anxiety is a form of freedom that the undisciplined will never experience. Structure also gives your mind a framework for processing challenges. When something goes wrong in a disciplined life, you have systems to fall back on. Your routine continues even when your emotions are in chaos. Your habits hold you steady when external circumstances are unstable. But when you lack discipline, every challenge becomes a crisis because you have no foundation. One bad day can spiral into a bad week because you have no structure to interrupt the spiral. Think about successful people across any field. Athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists. What they all have in common is not talent or intelligence or luck. It's structure. They have disciplined routines that they follow regardless of how they feel. They have systems that produce results consistently. They have rules that protect them from their own worst impulses. This structure is what allows them to operate at a high level over long periods of time. The weak mind rebels against structure because it sees it as oppressive. It wants the freedom to do whatever it feels like, whenever it feels like it. But this leads to a life of chaos, anxiety, and underperformance. You're not free. You're just reactive. You're bouncing from one impulse to the next with no coherent direction. And that reactivity creates suffering. You need to build structure into your life deliberately. Start with a morning routine that you follow every single day. Same wake time. Same sequence of activities. Make it simple enough that you can do it even on your worst days. This routine becomes your anchor. It's the thing that holds you steady when everything else is chaos. Then add structure to your work. Define when you work and what you work on. No negotiation. No wait to see how you feel. Just a clear structure that you follow. This eliminates decision fatigue and ensures that your most important work gets done regardless of your emotional state. Add structure to your health. Decide when you exercise and what you eat. Make these decisions once and then execute them daily. Don't debate with yourself every morning about whether you're going to work out. You already decided. Now you just execute. This structure will feel constraining at first if you're used to chaos. Your mind will rebel. It will tell you that you're being too rigid, that you're losing your freedom, that you're becoming a robot. Ignore that voice. It's the voice of weakness trying to maintain control. Push through the initial resistance, and you'll discover something profound. Structure doesn't limit your freedom. It amplifies it. When your basics are handled through discipline and routine, you have so much more mental space for everything else. For creativity, for relationships, for spontaneity in areas that actually matter. You're not using your willpower to decide whether to brush your teeth or work out. You're using it to solve interesting problems and create value. The goal is not to structure every moment of your life. The goal is to structure the foundational aspects so that everything else can flow more easily. Structure the basics so the important things get done. Then use the freedom that creates the focus on what matters most. Weak minds suffer in chaos because they have no foundation. Strong minds thrive in complexity because they have discipline to fall back on. Build your foundation. Create your structure. Give your mind a framework. It needs to operate at its best. This is not a cage. This is the scaffolding that allows you to build something great. Chapter 5. Discipline eliminates the anxiety of uncertainty. The modern world is full of uncertainty. You can't control the economy, other people's behavior, natural events, or countless other factors that affect your life. This uncertainty is a major source of anxiety for most people. They're constantly worried about things that might happen, constantly stressed about variables they can't control. And this anxiety creates enormous suffering. But here's what most people don't understand. Discipline is the antidote to this anxiety. Not because discipline gives you control over external circumstances. You'll never have that. But because discipline gives you control over yourself. And when you can trust yourself to handle whatever comes, the uncertainty of external circumstances becomes much less threatening. The weak mind is anxious because it knows it's not prepared. It knows that if something goes wrong, it won't be able to handle it. Lost your job? You have no savings and no other skills. So you're screwed. Got sick? You have no fitness base to recover from. So you're vulnerable. Relationship ended? You have no self-sufficiency or emotional stability. So you're devastated. Every area where you lack discipline is an area where you're vulnerable to circumstance. This vulnerability creates constant anxiety. You're walking on eggshells hoping nothing goes wrong because you know you're not equipped to handle it if it does. This is not freedom. This is living in fear. Fear of losing the job you hate because you can't afford to leave it. Fear of being alone because you haven't built a life you're proud of. Fear of challenges because you haven't built the strength to overcome them. The disciplined mind has a completely different relationship with uncertainty. Yes, bad things might happen. Yes, circumstances might change. But the disciplined person knows they have a foundation to handle it. They have savings to weather financial storms. They have health to handle physical challenges. They have skills to create new opportunities. They have mental strength to process emotional difficulties. This foundation doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it eliminates the anxiety that comes from feeling unprepared. Think about the confidence that comes from knowing you can trust yourself. When you're disciplined, you know that if you commit to something, you'll follow through. You know that if a challenge appears, you won't run from it. You know that if discipline is required, you have it. This self-trust is a foundation of true confidence, not the fake confidence of positive thinking, but the real confidence that comes from evidence of capability. This confidence changes how you move through the world. You're not anxious about opportunities because you know you can handle them. You're not stressed about challenges because you know you've overcome harder things. You're not worried about judgment because you know your worth is based on your own standards, not others' opinions. This is the mental freedom that discipline creates. The weak mind is constantly in fight or flight mode because it perceives threats everywhere. And when you're undisciplined, everything is a threat. A difficult conversation is a threat because you haven't practiced handling conflict. A physical challenge is a threat because you haven't built your body. A financial setback is a threat because you haven't built savings. Your nervous system is constantly activated because your lack of discipline has left you vulnerable on multiple fronts. But the disciplined nervous system is calm, not because life is easy, but because you've trained yourself to handle difficulty. You've proven to your nervous system through repeated experience that you can do hard things. That discomfort is not danger. That challenges are manageable. This training doesn't happen through thinking or affirmations. It happens through disciplined action that creates evidence. Every time you work out when you don't feel like it, you're teaching your nervous system that you can override discomfort. Every time you stick to your budget when you want to spend, you're teaching yourself delayed gratification. Every time you have a difficult conversation, instead of avoiding it, you're teaching yourself that you can handle confrontation. These are not abstract lessons. They're embodied experiences that reprogram your relationship with stress. This reprogramming is what eliminates the anxiety of uncertainty. You stop being afraid of the unknown because you built a track record of handling the unknown. You stop being anxious about change because you've proven you can adapt. You stop being worried about failure because you've experienced failure and recovered. The uncertainty of life doesn't change, but your response to it does. And that change in response is the difference between suffering and freedom. You need to understand that anxiety is not caused by external circumstances. It's caused by the gap between the demands of your life and your capacity to meet those demands. When you lack discipline, that gap is huge. The demands feel overwhelming and your capacity feels insufficient. This creates chronic anxiety. But when you build discipline, you're systematically increasing your capacity. You're closing the gap. And as the gap closes, the anxiety decreases. Start by identifying your biggest sources of anxiety right now. What are you worried about? What keeps you up at night? For each of these anxieties, ask yourself, is this something I could prepare for with more discipline? The answer is almost always yes. Worried about money? Build financial discipline. Worried about health? Build physical discipline. Worried about your career? Build skill development discipline. Worried about relationships? Build communication discipline. The anxiety you feel is information. It's telling you where you're unprepared, where you lack discipline, where you're vulnerable. Instead of numbing this anxiety or ignoring it, use it as a compass. Let it point you toward the areas where you need to build more discipline. Then build it systematically, relentlessly, until the anxiety fades because you've addressed the underlying vulnerability. This doesn't happen overnight. Building discipline takes time. But every disciplined action you take is a deposit in your confidence bank. Every workout is evidence that you can do hard things. Every dollar saved is evidence that you can delay gratification. Every difficult task completed is evidence that you can overcome resistance. This evidence accumulates until you reach a tipping point where you genuinely believe in your own capability. And that belief eliminates most of the anxiety that was ruling your life. The weak mind will always suffer from anxiety because it knows it's not prepared for life's challenges. The strong mind experiences peace because it knows it's built the discipline to handle whatever comes. Which mind do you want? The choice is yours, but understand that choosing requires action. Specifically, it requires disciplined action that builds capability. Start today. Build a foundation that will allow you to face uncertainty without fear. Chapter 6. Freedom requires the ability to say no. You think saying yes to everything is freedom. You think being open to every possibility, every invitation, every opportunity is what keeps you free. But you're wrong. That's not freedom. That's being controlled by external demands. Real freedom requires the ability to say no. And saying no requires discipline. The weak mind cannot say no. It says yes to social events it doesn't want to attend because it lacks the discipline to disappoint people. It says yes to food it shouldn't eat because it lacks the discipline to delay gratification. It says yes to distractions because it lacks the discipline to stay focused. It says yes to opportunities that don't align with its goals because it lacks the discipline to have clear goals in the first place. This inability to say no creates a life of being pulled in every direction by forces outside yourself. You become a people pleaser, a consumer of whatever is being sold, a follower of whatever trend is current, a victim of whatever demand is loudest. And you call this freedom because you're technically making choices, but you're not making real choices. You're just reacting. You're saying yes because you don't have the strength to say no. And that weakness traps you in a life that belongs to everyone else. The disciplined mind has the strength to say no to the party because there's work to be done, to say no to the dessert because there's a health goal that matters more, to say no to the easy path because there's a hard path that leads somewhere better, to say no to good opportunities because there are great opportunities that require focus. This ability to say no is what creates the space for yes. For saying yes to what actually matters. Think about your typical week. How much of it is spent on things that don't align with your actual goals or values? How many hours are consumed by obligations you don't care about, activities that don't serve you, and people who drain your energy? If you're like most people, it's the majority of your time. And you're sacrificing this time not because you want to, but because you lack the discipline to protect it. Every yes to something that doesn't matter is a no to something that does. When you say yes to scrolling social media, you're saying no to reading or learning or creating. When you say yes to staying out late at a mediocre event, you're saying no to your morning workout and productive day tomorrow. When you say yes to a project that doesn't align with your goals, you're saying no to projects that do. You can't have it all. Time is limited. Energy is limited. Focus is limited. And every yes commits these limited resources. The disciplined person understands this. They protect their yes by being liberal with their no. They say no to most things so they can say yes to the few things that matter. This is not about being antisocial or selfish. This is about respecting yourself enough to prioritize your own goals and values over the demands and expectations of others. It's about understanding that your life belongs to you, not to everyone who wants a piece of it. Saying no is uncomfortable at first. People will be disappointed. They'll question your priorities. They'll accuse you of being rigid or unavailable. Let them. Their disappointment is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to build a life that aligns with your values. And that requires a discipline to say no to everything that doesn't serve that purpose. Start practicing no in small ways. Say no to the next social invitation that you don't actually want to attend. Say no to the next food that conflicts with your health goals. Say no to the next distraction that tries to pull you away from important work. Notice how it feels. Notice the discomfort. Notice also the space it creates, the time it gives back to you, the energy it preserves. As you build this muscle, start saying no to bigger things. No to relationships that drain you. No to jobs that don't fulfill you. No to patterns that keep you stuck. Each no is an act of self-respect. Each no is you taking back control of your life from external forces. Each no is you exercising the freedom that discipline provides. The goal is not to become someone who says no to everything. The goal is to become someone who can say no to anything that doesn't align with who you want to be. This selectivity is what creates a life of intention instead of a life of reaction. This is what separates people who are free from people who are just busy. Your inability to say no is keeping you trapped. It's keeping you in situations that don't serve you. It's keeping you from the life you actually want. The discipline to say no is not about closing doors. It's about choosing which doors are worth walking through. And that choice is the essence of freedom. Chapter 7. Discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. Everyone has goals. Everyone has dreams. Everyone has some version of the person they want to become or the life they want to live. But most people never get there. Not because their goals are impossible, but because they lack the discipline to bridge the gap between intention and execution. And that gap is where all the suffering lies. The weak mind sets goals and then waits for inspiration to strike. It waits to feel motivated. It waits for circumstances to be perfect. It waits for the right time, the right opportunity, the right feeling. And while it's waiting, nothing happens. The goal stays a fantasy. The gap stays wide. And the suffering of unrealized potential continues to grow. The disciplined mind understands that inspiration is unreliable. Motivation is temporary. Perfect circumstances never come. The only thing that bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be is consistent, disciplined action. Not occasionally. Not when you feel like it. Every single day, regardless of how you feel. This is where most people fail. They can set the goal. They can create the plan. They can even take initial action. But they can't maintain the discipline to keep going when the novelty wears off, when the work gets boring, when progress slows, when obstacles appear, when no one is watching, when it would be easier to quit. This is when discipline becomes everything. Think about any significant achievement in your life. Something you're genuinely proud of. I guarantee that achievement required sustained effort over time. It required you to keep showing up even when you didn't feel like it. It required you to push through resistance and doubt and discomfort. That sustained effort was discipline. And that discipline is what made the achievement possible. Now think about all the goals you've set and not achieved. All the things you wanted to do, but didn't. All the versions of yourself you wanted to become, but haven't. What's the common factor? Lack of sustained discipline. You had the goal. You had the plan. You had the initial motivation. What you didn't have was the discipline to keep going when things got hard. This is a fundamental difference between people who achieve their goals and people who just talk about them. Not intelligence, not talent, not luck. Discipline, the ability to do what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. The ability to maintain consistency over long periods of time. The ability to keep showing up when every part of you want to quit. You need to understand that goals without discipline are just wishes. They're fantasies you entertain to make yourself feel better about your current situation. But they have no power to change your situation because there's no bridge between the fantasy and reality. Discipline is that bridge. It's the only thing that transforms a wish into an achievement. The bridge is built one day at a time. One disciplined action at a time. One choice to do the hard thing instead of the easy thing. One moment of pushing through resistance instead of giving in. These moments seem small and insignificant in isolation, but they compound. They stack on top of each other until you've built something substantial, until you've crossed a gap. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. They want immediate results. They want to see progress after a week or a month. And when they don't see dramatic change, they quit. They decide the goal isn't worth it, or the method isn't working, or they're just not capable. But the truth is they simply haven't given discipline enough time to work. Real achievement takes longer than you think. It requires more repetitions than you expect. It demands more discipline than you're initially willing to give. But if you can maintain that discipline over months and years, the results are far beyond what you thought possible. This is the power of compound discipline. Small actions that seem meaningless in the moment create massive change over time. The weak mind gives up. because it can't see the progress. It can't connect today's disciplined action to the future achievement. It needs immediate feedback, immediate reward, immediate proof that it's working. But discipline doesn't work that way. Discipline works quietly in the background, accumulating small advantages until they reach a tipping point where change becomes obvious to everyone, including you. You need to develop the ability to maintain discipline without immediate feedback, to trust the process even when you can't see results yet, to believe that the actions you're taking today are building toward the goal you set, even though the goal still feels far away. This faith in discipline is what separates people who achieve from people who quit. Start by connecting your daily actions to your long-term goals. Every morning, remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, not in a vague way, but specifically. I'm working out today because I want to be strong and healthy at 60. I'm saving this money today because I want the freedom to leave my job if it becomes toxic. I'm learning this skill today because I want to be irreplaceable in my field. This connection between action and outcome keeps your discipline aligned with your purpose. It prevents you from going through the motions without understanding why. It turns discipline from a burden into a tool you're using to build the life you actually want. You also need to track your discipline. Keep a record of the days you show up, the workouts you complete, the hours you invest in learning, the money you save. This record serves two purposes. First, it shows you that you are making progress, even when it doesn't feel like it. Second, it creates accountability. You don't want to break the chain of consistent days. The bridge between goals and achievement is not built with talent or luck or perfect circumstances. It's built with discipline, daily discipline, unglamorous discipline, the kind of discipline that no one sees and no one celebrates until you arrive at the achievement and everyone asks how you did it. And the answer is always the same: disciplined action over time. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to pursue your goals. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop waiting for circumstances to align. Start building the bridge today with whatever resources you have. One disciplined action, then another, then another. Keep building. The gap will close. The goal will arrive. The person you want to become will emerge, but only if you maintain the discipline. The weak mind suffers from unrealized potential because it can't bridge the gap. The strong mind achieves because discipline builds a bridge. Which mind do you want to have? Chapter 8. The compound effect of daily discipline. You drastically underestimate what small disciplined actions can create over time. You're looking for the big breakthrough, the dramatic change, the moment where everything shifts. But that's not how real transformation works. Real transformation happens through the compound effect of tiny disciplined choices that accumulate over months and years until the results are undeniable. The weak mind dismisses small actions as meaningless. It thinks, what difference will one workout make? Or what difference will saving $10 make? Or what difference will 30 minutes of learning make? And the answer in isolation is not much. One workout won't transform your body. $10 won't make you wealthy. 30 minutes won't make you an expert. But that's not how discipline works. Discipline works through repetition over time. It's not the single workout that matters. It's the 500 workouts over 2 years that transforms your body. It's not the $10 today. It's the $10 every day for a decade that builds wealth. It's not the 30 minutes once. It's the 30 minutes daily for years that creates mastery. The compound effect is invisible until suddenly it's not. Think about compound interest in finance. If you invest a small amount consistently over decades, the growth is exponential. Not because any single investment is large, but because the returns compound on themselves. Each period's gains become the base for the next period's growth. This same principle applies to discipline in every area of life. Every disciplined workout compounds your strength and endurance. Every healthy meal compounds your energy and health. Every hour of focused work compounds your skills and knowledge. Every dollar saved compounds your financial security. Every difficult conversation compounds your relationship quality. The effects are small at first, almost imperceptible, but they're accumulating. The problem is that most people quit before the compound effect becomes visible. They work out for a few weeks and don't see dramatic change, so they quit. They save money for a few months and still feel broke, so they quit. They learn a skill for a few weeks and still feel incompetent, so they quit. They give up right before the compound effect would have started to show. There's a concept called the plateau of latent potential. It means that your efforts are creating change even when you can't see it yet. You're below the surface. You're building the foundation. You're creating the conditions for breakthrough. But you won't see the results until you cross a threshold. And most people quit before reaching that threshold because they can't trust the process. You need to develop a longer time horizon. Stop measuring your progress day by day or week by week. Start measuring it month by month or year by year. When you zoom out far enough, the compound effect becomes obvious. The person who worked out consistently for 2 years looks completely different from who they were. The person who learned consistently for 5 years is operating at a different level. The person who saved consistently for a decade has options that seem impossible to someone starting out. This requires patience. Real patience. Not the fake patience of saying, I'll give a month. But the real patience of saying, I'll do this for as long as it takes to get the result I want, even if that's years. This level of commitment is rare. It's what separates the people who achieve significant things from the people who just dabble. The weak mind wants immediate results. It wants to see proof that the effort is working right now. It wants external validation that it's on the right path. But the disciplined mind doesn't need these things. It trusts the mathematics of compound discipline. It knows that consistent action over time produces results, even when those results aren't visible yet. You also need to protect your compound discipline from interruptions. Missing one workout might seem harmless, but it breaks the chain. It makes it easier to miss the next one. And when you start missing consistently, you lose all the compounding you had built up. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to do a moderate workout every day than an intense workout occasionally. The consistency is what drives the compound effect. Think about the person you want to be in 5 years. What daily disciplines would that person need to maintain to become who they are? Write these down. These are your compound disciplines. These are the actions that, repeated daily, will transform you into that person. They might seem small. They might seem insufficient. But trust the compound effect. Start today. Pick 3 areas where you want to see compound growth: health, wealth, and skill. In each area, identify one small action you can take daily, one that's so easy you can't fail. Then do that action every single day for the next year. Track it. Watch the compound effect work. Watch yourself transform to the power of small, consistent, disciplined action. The weak mind suffers because it keeps starting over. It keeps breaking the chain. It keeps interrupting the compound effect before it can work. The strong mind succeeds because it maintains discipline long enough for compounding to create exponential results. Which approach will you choose? The freedom that discipline creates. You've just walked through the blueprint for understanding why discipline is freedom and why weak minds always suffer. And now you stand at a choice point. You can go back to your undisciplined life and continue suffering, or you can start building the discipline that will set you free. But understand that this is not a one-time decision. It's a decision you make every single day, every single moment. The suffering you're experiencing right now is optional. It's not caused by your circumstances. It's caused by your lack of discipline in response to your circumstances. You're suffering because you haven't built the structure that creates stability. You're suffering because you can't say no to things that don't serve you. You're suffering because you're not bridging the gap between who you are and who you could be. You're suffering because you lack the discipline that would eliminate that suffering. But here's the beautiful truth that most people never discover. Discipline gets easier the more you practice it. The first time you say no, it's brutal. The 100th time, it's automatic. The first workout is agony. The 1,000th workout is a habit you crave. The first time you choose long-term good over short-term comfort, it feels like sacrifice. After months of consistent choice, it feels like freedom. This is the transformation I want for you. Not just understanding that discipline is freedom, but experiencing it, feeling it in your body, your bank account, your relationships, your work. Seeing the concrete evidence that the disciplined choices you made 6 months ago are paying dividends today. Building the life where you're not controlled by your impulses, but by your intentions. Everything I've shown you works. The structure, the ability to say no, the compound effect, the bridge between goals and achievement. But it only works if you apply it. If you take this information and do nothing with it, then you've just wasted 40 minutes. And that waste is exactly the pattern that's been creating your suffering. Taking in information without taking action. So here's what I want you to do right now, before you close this video and go back to your old patterns. Pick one area of your life where your lack of discipline is creating the most suffering. Just one. Don't try to fix everything at once. Is it your health, your finances, your work, your relationships? Pick the one that, if you handled it with more discipline, would reduce your suffering the most. Now, define one discipline action you can take daily in that area. Make it specific. Make it measurable. Make it small enough that you can do it even on your worst day. Work out for 20 minutes. Save $50. Work on my most important task for one focused hour. Have one honest conversation. Whatever it is, write it down. This is your discipline anchor. Commit to doing this action every single day for the next 30 days. No negotiation. No excuses. No skipping because you don't feel like it or because something came up. This is your test. This is where you find out if you're serious about freedom or if you're just another person who consumes content but never changes. At the end of those 30 days, you will have evidence. Evidence that you can be disciplined. Evidence that discipline reduces suffering. Evidence that you're capable of building the life you want instead of just wishing for it. And that evidence will give you the confidence to expand your discipline into other areas. Now, if this video has shown you something you needed to see, if it's challenged the way you think about freedom and discipline and suffering, then I need you to do something important. Subscribe to this channel. But not because you enjoyed the video. Subscribe because you're making a commitment to yourself. This channel exists for people who are ready to stop suffering from their own weakness. Every video is designed to challenge you, to show you uncomfortable truths, to give you frameworks that work if you're disciplined enough to apply them. When you subscribe, you're declaring that you're done making excuses, that you're ready to build the discipline that creates real freedom. Most people won't subscribe. They'll watch this video, feel momentarily inspired, and then go back to their undisciplined patterns. They'll keep suffering. They'll keep wondering why life is so hard. They'll keep being controlled by their impulses and circumstances. You have the opportunity to be different, to choose a path of discipline, to build a life where you're free because you're strong. Subscribing is not just clicking a button. It's you telling yourself that you're serious. It's you joining a community of people who understand that comfort is not freedom, that structure is not imprisonment, that discipline is the only path to the life you actually want. Turn on notifications so that each video becomes a reminder of the person you're becoming. A person who doesn't run from discomfort. A person who builds instead of wishes. A person who is free because they are disciplined. The weak mind will always find reasons not to subscribe. It will tell you that you can come back later, that you don't need reminders, that you'll remember these lessons on your own. That's the voice of weakness trying to maintain control. Don't listen to it. Subscribe now. Make the commitment now. Take the action now, because now is the only time you have. In the next video, I'll show you more uncomfortable truths that most people aren't ready to hear. I'll give you more frameworks that require discipline to implement. I'll continue to challenge you to become the person who is capable of real freedom. But you have to take the first step. You have to subscribe. You have to show yourself that you're serious about this transformation. So do it now. Hit that subscribe button. Join the people who have chosen discipline over weakness, who have chosen freedom over suffering, who have chosen to build a life that's worth living instead of just enduring. Let this be the moment you look back on and realize everything changed. The moment you decided that discipline was not your enemy, but your path to liberation. I'll see you in the next video. And when I do, I want you to be able to tell yourself that you kept your commitment, that you took your disciplined action every single day, that you didn't just watch and forget, but that you watched and transformed. Because that's what disciplined people do. They don't just consume information. They become different because of it. You are capable of so much more than your current undisciplined life is showing. But capability without discipline is just wasted potential. And wasted potential is suffering. Stop wasting. Start building. Stop suffering. Start being free. The path is clear. The choice is yours. Discipline is freedom. And freedom is waiting for you on the other side of your weakness. Now close this video and go prove it to yourself. Your disciplined life starts right now.